Germany expected to crush Soviet tanks in weeks, but ended up drowning beneath an unstoppable armored avalanche. In 1941, Soviet tanks were collapsing everywhere. 4 years later, they reached Berlin. So, what changed everything? Long before the Second World War exploded across Europe, the Soviet Union was already betting its future on tanks. Throughout the 1930s, it poured huge resources into building the world's largest armored force. But here's what made it interesting. These weren't all built for the same job. Some, like the T-26, were infantry tanks designed to support advancing soldiers. Others, such as the BT series, focused on speed for rapid breakthroughs, while massive heavy tanks were meant to smash fortified defenses. All of this was tied to the Soviet idea of deep battle, a doctrine built around striking deep behind enemy lines. On paper, the numbers looked terrifying. In reality, many designs still suffered from unreliable mechanics, thin armor, and crews lacking sufficient experience. And this is where the story really begins. The T-26 became the backbone of Soviet armored forces during the 1930s after being developed from the British Vickers 6-ton design. Armed with a powerful 45mm gun for its time, it could easily deal with many early tanks. More than 10,000 were produced, making it the Soviet Union's most numerous pre-war tank. It fought in Spain, clashed with Japan, and rolled through the brutal winter war against Finland. But there was one problem that kept getting worse. Its armor was only around 15mm thick. By the time Germany launched Operation Barbarossa, modern anti-tank guns punched through it with ease, turning yesterday's dependable workhorse into an increasingly obsolete battlefield casualty. But Soviet engineers weren't only thinking about protection, they also believed speed could win battles. That idea gave birth to the BT series, beginning with the BT2, built around American engineer J. Walter Christie's revolutionary suspension. Its large road wheels even allowed the tank to drive without tracks, reaching remarkable speeds that few rivals could match. The later BT5 added a far more effective 45mm gun, while the BT7 introduced improved armor and, in the BT7M variant, the powerful V2 diesel engine that would later become famous inside the T-34. These tanks perfectly matched the Soviet concept of deep operations, racing through enemy lines before defenders could react. It sounded brilliant, until real combat exposed the weaknesses. Thin armor left them vulnerable, complex suspension caused maintenance headaches, and many broke down before reaching battle. Yet despite those flaws, the BT series left behind something far more valuable than victories. It became the technological foundation that shaped the legendary T-34. Then came one of the strangest chapters in Soviet tank history. Instead of concentrating all their firepower into a single turret, designers experimented with tanks carrying several turrets at once. The T-28 served as a breakthrough tank with a large central gun and additional smaller turrets, proving useful during the Winter War against Finnish fortifications. The enormous T-35 pushed the idea even further, carrying 5 turrets and a crew of 11, creating an intimidating sight that dominated military parades far more than actual battlefields. But here's what nobody expected. Combat quickly exposed the flaws. Massive size, mechanical complexity, and unreliable performance made these giants difficult to use effectively. Even newer prototypes like the SMK and T-100 failed to impress during combat trials. Those disappointments convinced Soviet planners to abandon the multi-turret concept entirely and focus instead on a single, stronger turret that could deliver greater firepower with far better reliability. And then, everything fell apart. When Germany launched Operation Barbarossa in June 1941, the Soviet Union possessed thousands of tanks, including around 10,000 T-26 and roughly 2,500 BT-7s in the Western military districts. On paper, those numbers looked overwhelming. But numbers alone couldn't win battles. Many crews had little training, radios were missing from most vehicles, and commanders struggled to coordinate large armored formations. Fuel shortages, poor logistics, and constant mechanical breakdowns often stopped tanks before they even reached combat. German 37mm anti-tank guns tore through older Soviet designs, while better planning gave German forces the initiative. The disaster wasn't simply because Soviet tanks were inferior, it happened because the Red Army wasn't yet prepared to use its massive armored force effectively. But just when it seemed Germany had the upper hand, a completely different tank appeared. The T-34 combined thick, sloped armor, wide tracks for muddy terrain, a reliable 500 horsepower V2 diesel engine, and a powerful 76.2mm gun. It was unlike anything German crews had faced in 1941. Their standard anti-tank weapons struggled against its armor, while the T-34 could move across terrain that left many other tanks stuck. For German commanders, it was a genuine shock. That didn't mean it was perfect. Early T-34s had a cramped two-man turret, forcing the commander to fight and command at the same time. Poor optics made spotting enemies difficult. The gearbox was notoriously hard to shift, and many vehicles still lacked radios, making coordination frustrating during fast-moving battles. Even with those flaws, the design had something far more important. It offered the right balance of protection, mobility, and firepower. As production improved and weaknesses were gradually fixed, the T-34 didn't just help defend the Soviet Union. It completely changed the future of tank warfare. If the T-34 surprised the Germans, the KV-1 left them stunned. With up to 75mm of frontal armor on early models, it was almost immune to Germany's standard 37mm anti-tank guns during the first months of the invasion. One famous battle near Raseiniai in Lithuania saw a single KV hold up elements of the German 6th Panzer Division for an extended period, creating enormous frustration as shells simply bounced off its armor. But here's where the story changed again. The KV's heavy weight, reduced mobility, reliability remained a constant issue, and newer German 75mm and powerful 88mm guns gradually removed its battlefield advantage. The lighter KV-1S improved speed and mechanical reliability by sacrificing some armor, while the KV-85 served as a short-lived interim design carrying an 85mm gun before the newer IS series heavy tanks finally took over. The biggest Soviet weapon wasn't just the tank, it was the factories behind them. As German forces advanced in 1941, entire factories were dismantled and moved thousands of kilometers east, beyond enemy reach. Production restarted under incredibly difficult conditions, but it never truly stopped. Designers simplified vehicles so they could be built faster, parts became more standardized, and damaged tanks returned to service much more quickly. At the same time, crews gained valuable combat experience with every campaign. Mistakes that proved disastrous in 1941 slowly disappeared. By combining relentless production with improved tactics and repairs, the Soviet Union created an armored force that Germany simply couldn't destroy faster than it could be rebuilt. Here's the paragraph condensed to approximately 150 words. By late 1943, the original T-34's 76mm gun was no longer effective against German Panthers and Tigers, prompting the development of the T-34/85. Its larger turret introduced a three-man crew, allowing the commander to focus on battlefield leadership, while improved optics, a commander's cupola, and the more powerful 85mm gun greatly enhanced combat effectiveness. The T-34/85 proved its value during Operation Bagration in 1944, helping destroy German Army Group Center before leading Soviet advances across Eastern Europe and into Berlin. By 1945, it formed the backbone of the Soviet armored forces, offering an ideal balance of firepower, mobility, reliability, and ease of mass production. Alongside it, Soviet heavy tanks also evolved. The IS-1 introduced improved armor but had only a short service life, while the IS-2, armed with a devastating 122mm gun, excelled at destroying heavy tanks and fortified positions, becoming one of the most feared armored vehicles of World War II. The final step came with the IS-3. Featuring its distinctive pike-shaped nose and rounded turret, it arrived too late for combat in Europe. Even so, its revolutionary design heavily influenced post-war tank development around the world. Not every Soviet tank became famous. The amphibious T-40 was built for reconnaissance, but quickly disappeared as wartime demands changed. It evolved into the simpler T-60, an emergency design armed with a 20mm cannon that served mainly as a scout and convoy escort. The advanced T-50 looked promising with sloped armor and a three-man turret, but production difficulties limited it to only a handful of vehicles. The T-70 and improved T-80 continued supporting infantry, yet growing battlefield threats made light tanks increasingly vulnerable. Eventually, The versatile Su-76 self-propelled gun replaced many of its battlefield roles. Even before the war ended, Soviet engineers were already looking ahead. The T-44 introduced a completely redesigned hull with a transverse engine layout that lowered the vehicle's profile while improving protection and internal space. Although it saw almost no combat during World War II, its innovative design became the direct foundation for the legendary T-54 and T-55, marking the beginning of a new generation of Soviet tanks. So, what was the real secret? It wasn't that every Soviet tank was unbeatable. Early designs failed, crews struggled, and thousands of vehicles were lost. But the Soviet Union kept adapting. Sloped armor improved protection without excessive weight. Reliable diesel engines increased endurance while reducing fire risk. More powerful guns matched new German threats, and simpler designs allowed factories to build tanks in astonishing numbers. Standardized production sped up repairs, experienced crews learned from every campaign, and battlefield tactics steadily improved. Most importantly, the Red Army could replace losses faster than Germany could destroy them. By the final years of the war, it wasn't one tank that proved impossible to stop. It was the entire Soviet armored system working together. Soviet tanks didn't become unstoppable overnight. They earned that reputation through painful defeats, constant innovation, and relentless production. By 1945, they had transformed the Red Army into the world's dominant armored force, leaving behind ideas and designs that would shape tanks for decades after the guns of World War II fell silent.